Well, hello, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is going to be a little bit of a different stream today because I have a very special, illustrious guest, and we're going to have an awesome conversation. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone that I am now streaming live on this channel on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Sunday, we do F'd Up News, and then during the week, we either do news or we do interviews. We got lots of stuff going on, but there's always going to be new content on the channel, regardless of what is going on. And today, I am super, super excited to have my friend Dr. Howard Asher coming back to the channel for the first time in a while to talk about his new book, 2024. You guys are going to absolutely love this book. Now, before we get into it with Howard, I just want to remind, oh, that's not what I want to have up there. Jesus. I just want to remind everyone that Howard is not the only person that's written a new book. I also have a new book. I have a new website, Actively Unwoke. You can now pre-order my new book, and Howard and I are actually going to be talking about the process of writing books and the psychology of that. We're also going to be talking about the psychology of our political landscape currently. But you can check out my new book at activelyunwoke.com. You can pre-order your copy. And also, I've got some events coming up on February 1st. I'm going to be giving a free webinar that's going to be available and open to everyone with a super bare bones introduction to critical race theory and why it's bad. This is going to be different than the type of content that you normally see on my channel. So it's going to be a little bit more subdued. It's going to be a little bit more even keeled, because what I want to do is make this available to people who are just getting into critical race theory, don't really understand it, don't really know what it is. So it's going to be a time for your friends, your family, even if you have you have some vague notion of what critical race theory is, but you really don't, you want more information about it. This is going to be a perfect training for you. It's already 20% of the way filled up. So it is free, but it is space limited. So you want to make sure, if you are interested in this or you have friends or family that are interested in it, head over to activelyunwoke.com, sign yourself up. We also have some other things going on Actively Unwoke. On February 11th, I'm going to be bringing Nicole Solis on to do a free webinar on the platform, and she's going to be teaching people how to do public information requests, public records requests, to find out what the schools are teaching. And then on February 20th, I have an awesome book club that's going to be going on in my locals. We're going to read a book, The R of the Mind, which I can't say that word on YouTube, but it's basically about how totalitarian regimes imprint their message in the minds of their people. And I think it's going to be a fascinating read. We have Aaron Kinesvatter, who is the whistleblower from the University of Vermont, coming to join us for that discussion. So I think that that's going to be great. If you want to get in on that, please make sure you sign up for my locals at kb.locals.com. Now, you can sign up for free just to join and see what's going on. But if you want to participate in book club and get extra perks, you can sign up for $5 a month. You can sign up for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift, which gets you access to the platform for the duration of the gift. Now, tomorrow on the channel, I have another special guest. We're going to have Alou from Liberty Block come on to talk to us about the New Hampshire secession movement, because the committee hearing is happening this week. We want to get as many people out as possible, and we're going to talk about why we really think secession is the very best strategy and why our state reps should vote to advance the bill out of committee. I'm really excited to have Alou back on the channel. But without further ado, oh, yes, Nick, thank you for reminding me. So, programming note. Normally on Tuesday nights, we do Nothing Remotely Controversial with Joshua. Sadly, Joshua isn't feeling well today. Nothing serious. He assures me he doesn't have COVID, but he's not feeling well, so we're taking the night off so that Joshua can get a little bit better, because we want him in prime condition to help us out next week. So sadly, Nothing Remotely Controversial will not be happening tonight, but if you have sent in a super chat, don't worry, I've written them all down. Joshua and I are going to figure it out, so don't worry about that. But I want to bring on my very special, illustrious guest, Howard. Howard, I haven't seen you in a minute. How's it going?
Well, yeah, it's been a while. You know why?
Why?
What you see over my shoulder. I've been busy writing.
I know. Tell us about
Yeah.
your new book. I think guys, full disclosure, I have read the book, or most of the book anyway, but it's a really fascinating look. A really fascinating kind of like update to Orwell. Howard, tell us about the book you've been working on.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you. I don't want to proceed without saying. Do you notice there's a similarity to your book's cover and my book's cover?
There is a similarity, isn't it? Let's look at it again. Let's look at it again. That's not what I want to see. I want to see your book. So we got the eye there, and then I happen to like love my book cover. They did such a good job with the
Yeah,
eye and the TV. There it is right there. So we're
yeah,
both doing Orwellian books.
yes. Well, the world is doing Orwellian, and
Mm-hmm.
that's actually where this book came from. The wow. When I got the idea for this, it basically was a nanosecond before I had the whole thing, um, you know, uh, uh, written out in my mind as to why this book needs to exist,
Mm-hmm.
why I was going to write it, and let me just make a couple of dot connections here. We're both psychologists. We have different areas of psychology that we deal with, um, but there's a lot of overlap. And for some time now, like a lot of my life, I've been looking at human interaction and interpersonal interaction and community interaction. And community is like, the family, the neighborhood, the city, the state, the country, the world. So, in one way or another, we're community. And in working with people, as a psychologist, uh, I can't imagine how that could be done unless you had um, a good grasp on how all this interpersonal stuff, connects and what it all means and how it affects people's emotional well-being,
Mm-hmm.
um, their intellect, the whole thing. And so uh, there's something that existed throughout my life, that we're all aware of, and we started using the term a lot more so now than in a long, more so now than I can remember, and that's the term Orwellian. We understand, and people who haven't even read the book who still understand some of the ideas of dystopian, totalitarian, Big Brother, the memes that come out of Orwell.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've read the book, uh, uh, you know, if you've read the book, you know where it fits in the culture. You know where it fits in the politics. You know where it fits in the psychology. You know where it fits in the philosophy. What happens though is when something affixes itself into our culture and into our psyches, it becomes so familiar you can lose the sense of what the essence of it is. People say it all the time, and they sort of get a basic idea of what it is, but they don't really break it down in terms of sorting it out so they see how it plays out in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I noticed is, it seemed to be when I would pay attention to news broadcasts, read things, magazine articles, go on the internet. Every day, I probably heard the term Orwellian about 5 times a day. There's some, talking head would say, well, this is really Orwellian. And it wasn't that so much that people needed to understand what that meant. What I felt they needed to do is have a way to process it so that it has more essential meaning than just a bumper sticker.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea popped in my head. I wrote a novel. It's called 2024, probably for no other reason than the four lined up with 1984.
Right.
Um, it could have been any date, because what I wanted to do is to write something for our time, but I also wanted it to be timeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Orwell did. He wrote something that was for his time. He identified what was going on. He wrote about it as an allegory, and it was stunning work. It was dark, and um, the one thing that I wanted to, well, I want to clarify this. This isn't an updated version of 1984. 1984 stands by itself, and 2024 stands by itself.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of parallels,
Yes.
and it's tightly woven into what's going on in our current culture. So you could, with the two books, you don't have to read 1984 to read 2024 and get something out of it, or you can read it and it's very layered. It's operating on a lot of layers. And you can do a compare and contrast kind of a thing, how 2024 is like 1984 and how it's different.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost do it on a page by page basis. The other thing I realized was I learned a lot about what this issue of totalitarianism, of free speech, free thought. I learned something every day as I was writing it.
Oh, I bet you did. Yeah, that makes sense.
It was like I became a reader of the work, and I told you before, it was almost as if I didn't write it.
Mm-hmm.
Once the idea exploded in my head, and it exploded in a way that I said, this is necessary. This wasn't just an exercise that would be interesting and kind of cool, and it would line up a little bit with the 1984. It wasn't that way at all. It was something that struck me as vital and important to write, because it's important for people to understand their culture, their philosophical thought processes, how it affects their psychology, and how they interrelate with people about all of it. And what happens is, we were talking about it before, you get into a discussion of politics, as in any civilized society you would expect to do.
Yeah.
But how does it turn into a food fight immediately? And it goes off into some kind of a caricature, cartoonish discussion that has nothing to do with what the issues are. And that's a lot of what Orwell identified. He saw that there were memes that were being created in culture, and that people saw them over and over and over and over again, and just sort of accepted it as the way things are. So this was the inspiration for 2024. It's a novel, but I wrote this differently than I've ever written anything before. Usually when I write, I keep to myself. I'm in my head. I don't share anything that I'm writing with people. I flush it out with myself. And what happened was, I started to write it, and people were asking me what I was doing, and I was explaining this project, and they were very intrigued by it. They said, that's a good idea. That I was giving them plot elements and content element and the things I'm saying to you right now, and they thought this is really important. So they begged me to look at it, and it was a good thing that I did let people look at it. It was a very hard process, because you get a lot of critique that it's hard, because it's like, well, yeah, but that's what I meant, but this is anyway. But I took every idea that came in, and it allowed me to look at the thing from the perspective of how I want people to see what I've done here. And it was really helpful. And the comments I got more than anything else was, I'd never read a book like this before. The format of the book, it's basically a novel. It follows a main character. His name's Harry Archer. And he, obviously I wrote him, and hopefully it was successful. The feedback I'm getting is it is successful. How relatable he is.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And that he has a challenge, and he finds himself in this totalitarian culture, and he's got way different ideas than how the culture has gone and how the politics has gone. And what was interesting is, I was going to write about him sort of as a solitary guy, and as I wrote the story, it developed into, it was a family guy. I mean, he's like an everyday suburban family guy. And what unfolded was that dystopia looks like everybody's neighborhood. It doesn't have to look like ruins of buildings like the Orwellian style where everything has gone downhill. Although there's a little bit of that in the book, but basically most people who live in a middle American suburban community, they walk outside their cul-de-sac with other houses around, and it looks just fine. It looks like 1950. And can that really be dystopian? And what the book says is yes, even dystopia could look like everyday life because we get used to it. And then, the way politics is, some of the sloganeering that happens, and maybe in the beginning you might think the slogan sounds stupid, but when they say it over and over and over again, it just becomes sort of noise in the background.
And
So
I think this is such a salient point because it's like I think a lot of people think like a dystopian society, it's going to look like the movie version of
right,
1984, right? It's going to be like this dark, depressing place where like people are living in these basically like like project like housing complexes and all this stuff, and everyone's dressed in the same clothes, and that's not how it's going to show up in real life. It's going to show up more subtle. It's going to show up looking like normal.
exactly, and that's what I wanted to convey here. And the other thing too is there's a lot of comic elements to the book. It's not a dark and gloomy book, although it warns that unless we get sensible and we, basically it all comes from free thought and free speech, and anything that infringes on free thought and free speech will take us in a bad direction.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of philosophical underpinnings that support that I want to hear all of what people think and say, no matter what it is, and with the idea that it's the only way to flush things out so that your trajectory can go in a way that would enhance quality of life for more people.
Mhm.
And again, America, goes through this the kinds of things where there's a lot of negative attitudes about the United States.
Mhm.
And I grew up at a time when we revered the United States. The Pledge of Allegiance, the flag, the whole thing. These were powerful means. Then Kennedy got shot. There was the Vietnam War. There was drugs. There was women's rights movement. All kinds of things that were necessary to happen. But it got to the point where it was throw the baby out with the bathwater. And the reason I'm mentioning this is all the problems that exist obviously in America as a culture. It seems to have caused the greatest amount of prosperity for the most amount of people. And when the politics starts getting ridiculous, they get into this thing about just wanting to throw everything that works really well away. Well, you see that with defund the police,
Right.
and now you have major metropolitan areas that are run more on a woke way of doing things, and they have horrendous crime problems.
Mhm.
And there was those cases in New York on the subway, that woman that got shoved. I don't live in New York, so, but I guess the police were always a presence on the subways in the cars,
Mhm.
and I think that doesn't exist anymore.
No, I know a bunch of people in my locals that live in New York, and I was even talking to one of them yesterday, and she was saying that they don't plan on going outside. Like they order food in, they get delivery. If they need to go somewhere, they take a cab. Like they don't go outside because they're afraid of the random violence.
Yeah, yeah, and so because people are afraid to talk about, like, look, do police do bad things? Sometimes. Do they do good things? Yeah. I mean, you hear stories, but the idea that you would get rid of something that that has proven to have more safety component to it than abuses to it, and to be able to talk about that sensibly without thinking like, well, oh, so you're for the police, so you like people to be oppressed who are disenfranchised people. And no one said that. But
Mm-hmm.
if you hear some of the food fight ridiculous talk, that's exactly what's being said.
Well, let's talk about that because this is actually something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I think that for me, one of the things that is really alarming about where our culture is right now is that I feel like everyone, not just on the left anymore, because last time we had a regular series of conversations, we were focusing mostly on like Trump derangement syndrome and what was going on the left and the dangers of that, but in the last year, and especially in the last several months, I think this has ramped up across the board. What I see is that now the political right is backlashing against what the left is doing, and a lot of them are getting really, really angry. And so I feel like it's creating additional intensity to the outrage addiction on both sides. And people are just flying off the handle over things that, quite frankly, don't really matter.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and frankly, like, I'm kind of in a place where I'm getting especially black-pilled on the whole situation because I feel like there's nothing you can do to please people. On either side, there is literally nothing you can do to please them, and so the only answer to this is just to kind of retreat into your little community, try to find people that are like you, and to live your life the way you wanna live it, and try to stay out of people's way as much as possible, because it just feels like whether it's on the right or the left, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. People are always looking for reasons to be angry, they're looking for reasons to be upset, they're looking for reasons to, score political points or destroy people or any of these things. It's like someone tweets something that's read the wrong way, and all of a sudden they've got a cancel mob coming to destroy their life. And I
Yeah.
and cancel mobs are happening on the right now. The right is gearing up for it too. And so is this something that you've been noticing as well? This like kind of like increased proclivity to fly off the handle?
Yeah. Yeah. I have some bad news for you.
No.
Well, I always like to start off with the bad news so I can end up with the good news.
Excellent.
So yes, I'm not gonna leave you with the bad news. I'll cap it off with good news. So your inclination to walk away from the noise and the criticisms and the attacks and align with people that you figure are closer to the way you are, the way you think about stuff.
Mhm.
That makes all the sense in the world until when you go back to those people, sooner or later it starts to cannibalize. It's like, where could you actually go and run to be, with your peeps, if you want to say. And the bad news is there are no your peeps.
Right.
They're maybe compared to a bigger scale, you have peeps, but sooner or later you get in with your own, so to speak, and then someone starts biting your head off.
Mhm.
So what does
That's
this tell
true.
you?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Well, it's interesting. I have some good friends, and we were talking about the subject of the Ukraine came up, and Russia, and NATO, and the stuff that's going on there, and the group that I was talking with were I would categorize them as liberal, and somebody brought up, uh, well, Putin is just doing what he's got to do. And someone else said, no, he doesn't have to do that. And then they got into it wasn't a fight, but they had a 180 degree way of seeing it differently.
Mhm.
Now, what they were both bringing up, actually, there was at least more than a sliver of truth to both sides. But they couldn't, they the discussion was either going to try to get the other person to think that to see that they're wrong, come over to their idea, because they have some additional information. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? As if people are going to go, yeah, you're right, I was wrong about that. And so what I'm trying to say is, even with a group of people who pretty much align with each other politically, doesn't take long to get into a subject where the other one says, "You got to be kidding me! That's the
Mhm.
stupidest thing I ever heard," and I didn't. I'm disappointed in you, and I thought you were a better person than that, and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's the bad news. Is even if you run to safer places, a safer harbor, sooner or later that harbor is gonna is going to flood you and come at you just as hard as the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the good news? Well, the good news has to do with, I guess, why I even got into all this stuff is in the course of my career, what I do is conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is bringing, and the most of conflict resolution was people who were in a company. In other words, the company, they want the company to be successful, so they're on each other's side. Or in more personalized teams, are marriages.
Mm-hmm.
Marriages where you aren't going to marry somebody you want to be with and you care about. And of course, we're all adult enough to know that some marriages just don't work out. And
Yes.
how is that? And how can some people come to feeling so much contempt for the person that they love, assuming that they got into the relationship because they cared for the person, they loved the person. So I encountered very early in my career having to deal with conflict resolution from people who otherwise would be on the same side.
Hmm.
You know,
Okay.
conflict resolution on people who are on different sides is a different kettle of fish.
Well, let's go down this road then, because this is actually something I'm really interested in, because I've had this happen to me a couple times in the past couple of months. I actually had it happen to me today, where like this team of people that I'm on, and I'm not gonna get into like a lot of details on it, but like we should actually be on the same side, but there was a disagreement, and quite frankly, I turned out to be right, and the other people didn't like that, or then one other person specifically didn't like that I was right, and now all of a sudden we're fighting, and I'm a Nazi sympathizer, and it's like, what in the hell? Like, are we even living in reality anymore? Like, this is absolutely insane, and this happened to me recently with another group of people too, where people I had supported, people who are technically like on the same side, that just stopped actually seeing reality. And basically, I had to cut off contact with them and just block them on everything because they lost their dang minds. And I was like, we were all working towards the same thing like a week and a half ago. What the hell happened? So why is this happening, Howard? Why are people flying off the handle and not able to actually come together around common goals anymore?
The basic reason people lose sight of what the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you join a group and has a title, save the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it sounds like, do all good things for the planet, whatever that is. The thing is, if you break down what that means is you could find out that the goals are actually, even though the bigger goal sounds the same, once you break it down, they're actually different.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm curious about is when you were starting to have those conflicts, how quickly did they did they fire a shot? In other words, how immediate was it?
It was pretty well, not the one today so much, because it seems as though that conflict is dying down, and it seems as though we're gonna agree to disagree and move on. But like the other conflict that I was talking about, it was like it was literally fine one week, and then it was not fine the next week. It was like a snap of the finger. I was like, what the hell happened?
Mhm.
And it was just like it totally caught me off guard.
Okay, so you can identify with the word credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, credibility. I mean, you know what it means. All your viewers know what it means. Credibility. And so I'll now that everyone knows what it means, I'll say what it means. Uh, it means when you say something that people are apt to pay attention to it because it's thoughtful. You have credibility means you've got some kind of reputation that says I'm a thoughtful person, or I have data and information that backs up what I'm going to tell you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you expect the person would say, they would say blue. This person's going to say blue. And then they come out and then they say red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you'd be thrown by that. Now, some people then go, well, he said blue. So, okay, now I don't agree with anything this guy says forever.
Right, right. That's
Right.
exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. And so what it means is that that person didn't really have any credibility, because they've really had credibility when the person expecting to hear blue from a credible person who says red, the next thing they need to do is to say, tell me about that. Maybe I haven't considered everything. Prior to that, I thought it was blue, but I know that you have a good track record. So tell
Mm-hmm.
me why it's red. People don't operate this way. This is abnormal.
And that's exactly what didn't happen in this one circumstance that I'm thinking of. It was like it had to do with people that like I had been talking to for some cases in a couple cases in like over a year that I guess I gave them too much of the benefit of the doubt that I thought that if they had questions, they would at least come to me and ask me about it. But they didn't do that. All of a sudden, it was like one day they've just changed their tune, and now I'm the most horrible, awful person in the world that has never helped them at all. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And
Well,
so, like,
this will be
go
yeah,
ahead.
this will be
Sorry.
insult. I'm sorry. No, I want to say this because
Yeah.
this will be insulting, but that's really reptilian. In other
Mhm.
words, for somebody to have a knee-jerk reaction over something you say that you otherwise had credibility before, now all bets are off, is just low level. It's not sophisticated, and so you're basically, I mean, how many of us have sophisticated enough people that we work with that are part of our lives? And I get this is back to bad news. I don't think we do enough.
But this is what's getting so depressing for me because it's like we all have important goals we need to work towards, right? Like I wrote my book because I wanted to have people have a field guide that would give them tools and resources and case studies and examples to help try to move the needle towards creating the world that I want, right? Which is one that's based on individualism, meritocracy, color, not judging people by the color of their skin, things like that. And it's like I think this is problematic when we're talking about trying to find your political allies and actually trying to make a difference in the world because, at least well I'll articulate how it's happened for me and then you can tell me because I think this also has to do, Patrice in the chat has brought up her family, like family members can change on a dime like that as well. So I think this is relevant to a lot of different cases. But I think if you're trying to find like your allies to make a difference in the world, and then all of a sudden, those allies, for lack of a better term, like shit the bed and turn into crazy people. For me, it made me kind of question everything. I was like, do I even have the judgment to know who to trust and who not to trust? And
Yeah.
the result for me is I've kind of made the decision, and this is part of why I'm building out like actively on woke.com that and sorry if this offends anyone, but I'm like, I'm doing it all myself. I don't care anymore. I am doing this all myself. I will do it my way. Maybe it'll be slower this way, but at least I won't be thrown under the bus and let down by people who I thought we were working towards the same goal, and now they're completely trying to destroy everything that I've been working towards for the last 2 years.
Yeah. I suspect it's not a case of you being a bad judge of character.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you get it right all the time. I'm good at it. I don't get it right all the time. Or I get it right for certain circumstances. And I,
Mhm.
I can't be expected to read how a person's going to be in every kind of circumstance. Judging, if we could permit me saying, judging people is kind
Mhm.
of like a moving target. And it's a lot more complicated, and you could really assess them very well in some capacity, and in another capacity you don't have a clue. You don't have a
Mhm.
clue how that person's going to be. So I don't know that'd be that. I think you're probably pretty good at assessing. By the way, you let me read your book. It's great,
Thank you,
and
Howard.
it is, and it's necessary. And the people who following your live streams would do well to get it. You identified a lot of things that are very important. Um,
I think
we,
it's a good book. I'm just very self-conscious about it. I think like writers are always self-conscious about the work that they create.
I, well, yes, it's you can't divide, you can't disconnect yourself from it. Um, I can't, I can't. I lost count of how many times I read the book behind me,
Mhm.
and getting every word just the right way. And up until yesterday, editing it, and then adding, and then saying, wait, that doesn't, it's an ongoing look. I think that that's a good thing to be that way. I
Mm-hmm.
think the quality of of what I've read, your previous book, this one is great. And
Thank you,
I go
Howard.
through, yeah, I go through the same thing of wanting to rewrite and get it better and better. Uh, okay, so you're putting out principles for that are helpful for people.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, even the brightest amongst us don't follow these principles reliably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're emotional beings, and I think there's a way of sooner or later you're going to step into something with somebody and you didn't see it coming. Now, when whatever happens, can you manage a reset? Um,
Trying to manage a reset.
well, and I guess it depends on the circumstance and and the person you're talking about. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you were to talk about this in a general kind of a way,
Yeah.
when somebody you otherwise respected and you got along well with and you thought you were on the same page, um, and they come at you with something different than you thought,
Mm-hmm.
what's what? How do you react to that?
I think, and I'm really happy that we're broadcasting my personal therapy session on the internet right now, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm totally willing to go down this road because I think that this is important, and I think it's good for people to hear. So when people come at me in a way that I don't expect, oh God, if I'm honest about it, and I like to think that I'm honestly self-reflective about some of these, sometimes I handle it better than others. Sometimes I do. Sometimes like if a person comes at me with something I'm really not expecting, I sometimes have an instant reaction to it that I could probably handle better. I think that other times I try to think like what in the hell happened? Like how did we go from being okay literally yesterday to now me being the worst person in the world, because that's not reflective of the experience that I've had here. So
Okay,
I guess I don't know.
all right. Well, look, however personal this is for you, okay,
Mhm.
but I still think there's a lot of generality about this that's very helpful. So I have some follow-up questions.
Let's do it.
When you act in the good way,
Mhm.
what are the characteristics of the good way? What makes it a good way as opposed to the less good way?
I think asking questions. I think taking the time to think like, okay, did this person have something going on with them that is causing them to act all of a sudden very out of character for what
Yeah.
you've experienced? I think kind of like taking a beat and breathing and being like, part of what I'm seeing is about what's going on with them and really has nothing to do with me, and maybe it's manifesting in a weird way. I don't know why they're targeting me, but like it probably has nothing to do with me since things were fine yesterday. So I think if I'm being thoughtful about it, that is how I would hope I would react to it.
That's a great answer. I'm gonna shore that up
Mhm.
for you and everybody and myself. Okay. So in my long career of working with people, the one of the first things I identified was communication um, skill.
Mhm.
And communication skill, you've heard this before, but I'm going to emphasize it even more. Communication has more to do with listening than it does to talking.
Yes, that's very true.
Right.
Communication is what the receiver hears.
Right. In fact, I
Mhm.
use the term receiver and giver, the message giver and the message receiver. I used to do seminars on this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I was even going to do my doctoral thesis on it. I didn't. I did another subject. But I want to tell you just how important I thought communication was, and how much I thought people were horrible at it.
Mhm.
And my lectures would be about, I'd say, there's probably about 2% of the world's population that actually communicate effectively, and the rest do not.
I think that's
And
probably true.
I was trying to make the point that communicating effectively is not natural. You actually have to train yourself to do it,
Mhm.
and it will go against your instincts. So you break things down so people could they know what it is that okay. So I'm thinking in terms of when you're watching a baseball game, like a kid's baseball game, and you're in the stands and you say to the batter, keep your eye on the ball. Do you know that that doesn't mean anything? Everyone says it. Hey, Bobby, keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Bobby nods his head or hears it or doesn't hear it. But it's advice, right? And it's intended to be, if you're going to be a good batter, you got to keep your eye on the ball so
Right.
you can hit it. So you can hit it. Well, I realized that we say all kinds of things that people don't even know what it means. What keep your eye on the ball. So I actually did this with when I was like an assistant coach. When I was talking to Bobby, we'll call him Bobby. I said, Bobby, when you're at the plate, watch the ball hit the bat.
Oh, that's fundamentally different, isn't it?
Isn't it different? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because most people, when they keep their eye on the ball, there's a blind moment when you're swinging the bat, and that's where you could miss it because your eye-hand coordination would have the ball, your bat be at a different level than the ball, and you swing and miss.
Right.
So keep your eye on the ball doesn't mean anything, but if you say watch the ball hit the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, do you know how many kids in this culture grew up with keep your eye on the ball and don't do it?
Right.
Well, our communication is the same way. You got 90%, 98% of the people not communicating at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wonder how our politics are off because we use
Oh my
language.
God.
Yeah, I mean,
This is so true. Like, I feel like almost every single conflict that I've been in around, politics or what's going on in the world, especially, it started off with me being misquoted about something where
right.
someone, again, this literally happened to me an hour ago. Like, someone said to me, well, you said this. And I was like, that is absolutely has no relevance at all to what I said. Like, here is a direct quote of what I said. You've completely misquoted me. And it starts off with that because it's like, one of the things I want, one of the slogans that I've been kicking around in my head is like, can we just make reality matter again? Can we actually make the reality of what I said in this situation matter more than what you had wished I said so that you could feed your outrage addiction?
I love that because we overall have not made reality matter. And in my book, over my shoulder there's dialogue where they talk about honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about, the characters talk about it in the context of, well, what's a lie? What's a truth? And I've always never liked the term, their truth.
Right.
Yeah. So we talk about, the character talks about, Harry, the main character, says wisdom is about knowing what matters. What matters. And so we're not talking about what matters anymore.
Oh, I know.
We're talking about I want to pick some political thing. Okay, you know something? We there was the hostage situation at that synagogue in Texas,
Right.
and it got a lot of flack for I don't know if you followed it, but basically the FBI was downplaying the terrorist part of it because it was got PC. They didn't want to go too much into.
They didn't want to call him an anti-Semite.
Yeah, anti-Semite and all of that. So they avoided all of that and said it was something different. And then I think Biden was asked about it, and of course, gun control got discussed. Which, to whatever you think about gun control, it didn't matter to that specific situation. It got diverted by that subject. So what happens in politics is subjects get diverted to some kind of shiny object, and you're not talking about what matters anymore. You're talking about that shiny object.
Right.
Well, the same thing happens in interpersonal relationships. We do it the same way. Now, so there's an answer to doing this. If you accept that, let's just say 95% of everything you're going to experience from another person, you're going to disagree with or be offended with or have a problem with. That's a big 95%.
That's a lot.
Yeah, don't you think?
That's a lot. That's a little much.
Well, let's go with it just for a thought exercise, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And so what we're also doing is we're prepping you to expect more that people are going to align with you, are not going to align with you than align with you. In other words, it's just an expectation. Let's further put an overlay that it's okay. You know, in other words, not only will people either offend you or say something different or have a whole different way of looking at the world, all of that, we also say whatever. Just other people, think different than I do.
Right.
Then the way that we respond to it, when you get what I refer to as the unwanted message, when you receive an unwanted message, what do you do with it? Well, instead of pushing back, what you do is you encourage and you invite it. How do you do that? You ask a question motivated by genuine curiosity. So it might be something like, how
The
long do you
genuine curiosity piece is key.
very, very, you can't do it sarcastically. You
No.
can't ask a question and say, oh, really? Is that what
Yeah.
you think?
Yeah. And the
You know,
other person is going to know if you're being genuine or not.
absolutely. So you'd say, look, I didn't see that coming. I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me something about that? Because educate me. Okay. Now, if you push back against the unwanted message, well, let me back up a little bit. I'm sorry to do this to you.
That's okay.
When I work with people on communication skills, I'll ask them what's their goal? What is their goal when they're working when they're communicating? And it's a setup question. I get a lot of different answers, like, well, it's to get information, it's to work out a problem, it's to, all kinds of stuff. And then I get to say, no, that's not your goal when you communicate with someone. When you communicate with someone, what you need to demonstrate is you care about their feelings.
Yeah.
Now, I don't always care about people's feelings, but if I enter into a conversation with somebody, I don't mind going into a compartment that says it's time for me to listen to this person. Otherwise, why am I talking to them?
Yeah.
The whole point so if my point is to care, do I demonstrate that I care about their feelings if someone says something to me and I say, well, you're a jerk? That's totally ridiculous.
No, you do not demonstrate that you care.
Or right. And this is
Or if you call them out on Twitter without having a private conversation with them, you do
all of
not
that.
demonstrate that you
Yeah,
care.
they don't care. But if you ask a person, I never thought that before. Can you explain it to me? Because that's a new idea. The prospect that the person will feel like you care what they have to say goes up. And that's the purpose in communication. It isn't to get your ideas across. It's to demonstrate that you care or have an interest in what the other person's all about. Otherwise, you don't have to talk to anybody.
Right. I mean, I feel like we are living in a time like that there is just a lack of inclination to have any curiosity about the perspectives of other people. And again, this goes for whether or not you've got like the woke left trying to cancel someone they think is a Nazi. And I think it also goes towards what we've been talking about when you have people on this that should actually be on the same team and are working towards the same goals that are maybe bringing in selfish or ego driven motivations to those goals. Like, and they just like they stop having any curiosity about where other people are coming from. And to me, this is just, it's incredibly dehumanizing. It's
It is.
incredible. And I mean, and I'll even say that, like, I'll take this bullet when I'm dealing with someone that I believe has no curiosity, that is only trying to score outrage points, that is only trying to feed like whatever their addiction is to outrage. I will not play into this at all
Yeah.
anymore. And
It's
maybe that causes more conflict, and I can own that, but it's an incredibly the amount of dehumanization that's happening on both sides.
yeah.
It's really frustrating and really, frankly, quite depressing to me.
Yeah, everything you said is absolutely correct. It's destructive, it's dehumanizing, and it's all based on this element. Does this person give a damn or care at all or interested at all where I'm coming from?
And
And
that's
it,
the piece that hurts the most, I think, in some of these communications, and I think that that's especially probably true with family members,
yes,
right? Where you have people that are having this conflict over politics within families. I think one of the most hurtful things for me in some of the conflicts I've had is like, I thought we had a good relationship. I thought we were friends, or I thought that, you valued the relationship, and now it just feels like you don't care.
right. That's the key right there. I don't know if when you put it that way, they respond to, well, I don't care or I do care. I don't know, but you can see how all bets are off once you get the sense that they don't care about you, or if
Yeah.
they don't, or if you don't, if they feel like you don't care about them, then the conversation's done.
Yeah.
It's over, because that's the whole point of it. And I'm going to repeat myself. A lot of times people think of conversation is to get your idea across, to promote something, to do the project, to get the data, and all those things happen. But if all that happens without the caring component, or either caring or being interested in, if all that happens without that component, there's no communication.
Mhm.
And so people can pay attention. I mean, you can do it in real time. They can say, is this communicating? And all bets are off if anyone in that communication dyad has the sense that the other person doesn't care.
Mhm. Yeah.
As a clinician, I've even asked, someone is saying something about whatever, and there seems to be a disconnect going on. I will ask, I said, I'm hearing what you're saying. Do you think I'm interested in it?
Mhm.
They may say, no, I don't. That means I'm not conveying it. Or, yeah, I can see you're interested in it. Okay, good. We're in a good place then. I have to check in when I'm talking to people. Are you getting a vibe? Are you getting enough, feedback that tells you what you're telling me matters?
Mhm.
And if you got that going for you, you're in communication. If you don't have it going for it, you don't have it. You got people talking past each other. Trey Gowdy actually wrote a book about it. It
Did
came out
he?
last year. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. I forget the name of it. When I saw, and it came out and everything, that was the book I was going to write. I told you I have those, no, because I think it's really important. I put a lot of stock in communication and defining what communication is. And I'm telling you, most of the world's problems is because only 98% of us are actually communicating effectively.
Mhm, mhm. Well, Jenny's getting inky with it said something interesting in the chat that I wanna get you to respond to. She said, "People conflate agreeing with caring."
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I think that I tend to agree with that. I feel like, if I think it's easy to assume that if you feel like you're on the same page with someone, then that means that they care about you, or care about the relationship. And I think it's also just as easy for people nowadays in our current political climate to assume that if you disagree with someone, that means you don't care about the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah. She's right on. What's her name?
Jenny's getting inky with it.
Yeah. Well, she said it really well. They're not the same. I can
Mhm,
disagree with you a whole lot,
mhm,
not nowhere near on the same page, and totally care about where you're coming from.
mhm.
They're not the same thing, nor should they be the same thing. I didn't say that quite right. Don't
Okay.
expect that they would be the same thing.
Do you think that when conflicts over political opinions, happen in families or in different friendships or things like that, do you think that, oh shoot, I had a question and I lost it. Like, how can people overcome that sense of like, if you don't agree with me on every single thing, you don't care about the relationship?
Well, the first part is they understand that it's reptilian to think of it the other way. I mean, I'm using a crude way. You're really not bringing your Homo sapien brain that calculates, that's sophisticated. It's just not sophisticated.
Mhm.
So so you hear something and you immediately go to. It's what happened with Trump. Um, there are reasons why people thought Trump was the choice for president.
Mhm.
It didn't mean they liked him. I mean, obviously there were some who also liked him, but the what she said was really good. That conflating stuff's ridiculous. It's like, well, if you vote for Trump, there must be something wrong with you.
Right.
You know, here they always say avoid the Hitler comparison. So
I just lean into the Hitler comparisons now, Howard. That's the point
oh,
I've reached with this. I
okay.
lean into it.
Well, I've always loved them. I use them all the time. I would imagine, well, when if you know your history, you know something about the Weimar Republic. I mean, things were just in disarray, and Hitler comes across, politician thug that he is, and I imagine that there's some people who thought, you know what, finally a guy is going to take care of everything. You know, everything's just really messed up, and yeah, again, I'd have to be there to really know it. Shame on me if I don't know any better. So he was very vocal about his anti-Jew stuff, and I imagine some people sort of shrugged and said, I mean, the Jews, people always hated the Jews. I'm sure it's not going to be so bad. So what? You know, at least the trains are running on time." So I'm sure you had those kind of people who voted for Hitler. Um, I know that when Trump got elected, there was all kinds of comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
I I think I'm right about this, but I don't think that Trump, you know, gathered up any Jews or other types and put them in concentration camps. I
No, I
heard,
don't believe
I
he did.
yeah, no, I heard that he was going to. I heard somebody who might be listening to this said, "Oh yeah, he did." And then what about the timing? Whatever. I I'm in other words, I'm not come around that Trump did that. So for me, he's in the category of not having done that Hitler thing. Um,
Right.
but but I think he made the trains run on time. I think, you know, gas prices, you know, were energy.
We're much
Uh,
better.
yeah, yeah. So, you know, if you break this down, I sure we would find people who voted for Hitler or liked Hitler, and then found out how bad things were and said, "Oh my God, okay, yeah, I'm off. I'm not liking Hitler anymore."
Right.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of that. In fact, I think Germany after the war, there was a lot of not talking because a lot of people said, "I didn't know he did that." Now
Mm.
you could certainly say, well, I don't know why he kept saying all those bad things about Jews, you know, so you know, you got to figure it would have happened. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm making allowances that that people could come up with decisions that doesn't make them evil. And if you getting back to, you know, the book over my shoulder here, that's the reason why you need free thought and free speech.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things have lots of layers to talk about and discuss. And if all we do is look at black and white, that is up or down, just, you know, one way or the other way, in the extreme, we're never going to. You can't send, you know, rockets to Mars, which is very complicated, without all that inside stuff and all that gray area and all those subtleties and all those nuances. We need all of that to understand everything. And in our public discourse, we're either on this side or that side, and there is no middle.
Well, and I feel like there is a real reticence among people, again, on all sides at this point, to like people don't want to admit that they're wrong. They dig their heels in, and even if they are presented with evidence that they were not correct, they just continue to dig their heels in. And I'm like, I don't mind admitting when I'm wrong. I don't mind admitting when I don't know the answer. I don't mind admitting when I make a mistake. Now, I'm not going to say I made a mistake just to make someone feel better unless I actually believe I made a mistake, right? But if I
Yeah,
legitimately am presented with new evidence, or I have someone present me with a different perspective to make me reconsider something I said or did, I'll absolutely admit I made a mistake or I could have done things differently.
yeah,
But I think a lot of people just they feel like I think a lot, and maybe this goes back to like our survival brain too. It's like I think so many people feel like admitting a mistake is almost on par with like dying, or just like a failure that puts them in like that puts their life in danger. And it's like no, like we should be teaching people how to fail gracefully and
Yeah.
learn from their mistakes and make improvements and move on. And one of the reasons I think my story resonated so much with people was because I kind of took a step back and I looked at new information and I allowed myself to go where the information was taking me and I changed my mind.
Yeah.
And why was it so extraordinary that someone changed their mind? I mean, this still to this day like boggles my mind. Why was it so extraordinary that someone wrote an article on the internet about changing their mind? And that was so kind of distinct from what was going on in our culture that it stood out in any way.
There's a lot going on there. Right when you said people don't want to admit they're wrong, I immediately said in my head, I always want to admit when I'm wrong as quick as I possibly can.
Mhm.
So, but I knew what you meant because I agree with you. People don't want to admit it. But in my head, I was saying, why not? It's like I want to get as right as I can be, you know. So
And then
I
people treat it as some sort of victory and like that they're owning you if you admit that you're wrong. I'm like, guess what? We've all been wrong in our lives.
right, right. So I think we did this to ourselves, and I'll
Mhm.
give you an example. Um, so I will do evaluations that the courts order. So I have to testify in court with the evaluations that I've done.
Mhm.
It can involve child custody matters and things like that. Um, I'm going to tell you something that's I'm not being arrogant or boasting, but it's intended to tell you how careful I am. Any case that I've ever been involved with, I have 100% track record in it going the way that it was supposed to based on my evaluations.
Mm.
So that's a good track record. And I've been doing this for almost 50 years. Now, if you go in court and you write a report, the courts are not really interested in the truth, or the opposing side's not really interested in the truth.
Mhm.
They really just want to discredit you. So there's different objectives. So I'm minding my own business, being an expert, going to write a report. I've
Mhm.
worked very hard in this. I'm very meticulous. It's why I have a good track record. And the other side just wants to tear me down.
Right.
They'll ask what grades I got in research psychology in graduate school.
How long ago did you go to graduate school?
It was a long time ago, so I don't even remember.
I got
By
all
the way,
A's in graduate school, so I'd be able to answer that.
no, I'm going to tell you something. Okay, I got all A's in graduate school, but I
Mhm.
really made B's, and I'm going to tell you what. I'll tell you how I did that. I was pretty vocal in class, and I learned how to talk and make a good case.
Yep.
Okay,
It
so
happens.
I think that the teachers liked me enough by my class presentations that even though I didn't score in the 90s,
Mhm.
they looked at me as an A student. And you get those kinds of considerations in graduate school. I'm a little bit proud of not. I mean, I got like 80s,
Yeah.
so I didn't do bad, but so my forte was being able to make a good case, and I learned that. I learned how to communicate,
Right.
and I took that into the courtroom. And I'm getting to this whole thing about being right and wrong.
Yeah.
So I do the report. I'm making my good case, and opposing counsel says to me, "Well, Dr. Asher, have you ever been wrong?"
Mhm.
Now that's a setup question.
Yeah.
Okay, there's how I could say, "No, I've never been wrong," and then now they know I'm not credible, right? Because nobody's ever been right all the time.
Right.
Or I could say, well, yeah, I've been wrong. And then that just leads them down the path. Well, why aren't you wrong then about this case that you did?
Mhm.
This is my way of answering the question how we painted ourselves in a corner where there's a demand that we have to be right all the time because there's so much writing on it all the time.
Mhm.
So um, I hope I set that up so you might want to know how I answered that
I
question.
really wanna know how you answered that question. Yeah.
I said, counselor, of course I've been wrong. More than I'd care to have to admit.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never been wrong about the reports I write.
What if you had been wrong about one of the reports that you wrote? How would you answer it then?
Well, the evidence never showed up that I was wrong. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I've written addendums to reports
Mm-hmm.
to say additional information came in, and the addendums always supported the original
Mm-hmm.
conclusion anyway. So I just have a good track record with the reports, and sometimes on those reports, I mean, you're down to the wire, and I would make a change, and I'd look at it and go, oh my God, wait, I said that, and it's not consistent with this other thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so, unlike anybody else, it's a work in progress. But we both know why he asked that question. Have
Yeah.
you ever been wrong? And it's you can't answer the question unless you come up with a clever enough question. I've been wrong a lot, and I hate it when I am wrong. I try not to be wrong, but not on these reports.
Yeah.
And we blew past that and got to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge nodded. I always look. Well, I always look at the judges, but you see, we're tightly wound up to have to perform certain ways and have credibility and be right all the time.
And the thing of it is too, like you're talking about court. Like court is much more consequential than say Twitter, right? Like if I'm wrong on Twitter and I say, "Oh, rethought it and I don't believe this anymore or I got this one wrong." Like in most cases, there is literally no consequence either way in my life or in anyone else's life. And so I can understand being incredibly thoughtful when we're in court and making sure we're answering things to make sure that we don't allow the attorneys to throw us off our game or whatever. But why can't people in just like normal life, if they make a mistake or if they didn't have access to all the information, or maybe they got a little hot headed, why can't they just say, like, I got it wrong? What is preventing so many people from doing it, especially when not like to me, I try to make things as simple as I can possibly make them. And understanding that life is more complex and nuanced, but I do like to kind of like boil things down to just like bare bones. Do you care more about holding on to you being right in this circumstance, or do you care more about preserving the relationship that we had and moving forward productively together? And it's like, if you care more about being right about something, and I frankly don't even care what that thing is because, like, in the vast majority of cases, it's pretty inconsequential if we're talking about like political opinions. Do you care more about holding on to this opinion that you are absolutely unqualified right in this circumstance, or do you care more about maintaining the relationship? And if someone that is in my life that I have a disagreement with cares more about just being tightly wound around the fact that they're right and their way is the only way to see things than they do about having a relationship with me, that to me is an indication that that is not someone I should be investing any time in. And sometimes that is an incredibly heartbreaking thing sometimes, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm listening to you, and I'm saying, at some point, you could come to the conclusion that you just can't be a friend or even within the family with the person anymore if it's that extreme. But there's a fundamental answer to your question. It's like, why can't people just,
Mhm.
care about this instead of that? And you know what the answer is, and it's called cognitive dissonance,
I know.
right?
I know.
Yeah, if they would entertain that they might have gotten it wrong, the whole foundation of their thinking may have to go with it, which speaks to it speaks to a certain kind of dynamic that is very serious. um Imagine you have a certain worldview about something, you have a certain value set. I think values are really important.
Mhm.
uh I mean, I'm pausing here because there's so many ways values impact who you are.
Mhm.
So anyway, you have a philosophical set, a value set, a data algorithm, and you see the world. And let's say there's something that if you admit to being wrong, it destroys the foundation of everything else you think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the inclination is going to be to try to work around and make an adjustment so that you don't have to give up whatever conviction you have about something. And people will hold on to a conviction stronger than they hold on to a person.
Mm-hmm. Why is that? Like, it honestly just breaks my heart. And maybe I'm searching for an answer here for like my personal problems and my personal relationship over everything else. But it really does. Again, I go back to this notion that it just feels so incredibly dehumanizing. And is it is it the case that, okay, let me ask it this way. Do you think that we can, okay, I'm going to change the question. Was there ever a time when we valued our human relationships over these types of political convictions? And if there was ever a time that that was true, can we please go back to it?
That's a great question. I don't really know the answer to it. When I think about what the answer might be, would go to pre-political times,
Mm-hmm.
in civilization when there wasn't any politic going on. But even in however long you go back, there's always some kind of politic going on. Can That's a very interesting question. Can a person care more about the person than they can about the politic?
I mean, isn't that kind of the central question of what we have going on today? And again,
Yeah.
not even just on opposing sides, but even within infighting that's happening in these political groups. Can you care more about the human relationship than, whatever, not even, it doesn't even necessarily need to be about politics, than about whatever the disagreement was?
Okay. I think I'm forming an answer because I'll tell you, I'm really not sure, but I like the idea to think about it on the spot. So how about if we approach it this way? Forget about the people you likely would care about.
Hmm.
How many more people are there that you don't care about?
A lot more.
Right. Okay. That pool of people is almost infinite. It's
Yes.
just people you don't know. You don't by I want to be real clear about not caring about people. Not that you wish anybody any harm that you don't know, but
Right. It's just like,
you're just not invested in people you don't know.
right.
Okay. So that being that is infinitely more than the people you do care about, the muscle to not care about others is really well exercised.
Okay.
So when you bring it close to people that you have to use an extra push to push back the thing that is causing a barrier, you're not exercised in. Why? Watch this. It's really good. It's communication. Because
Mhm.
you haven't skillfully perfected how to communicate, when it comes time to show the closeness or bond that you have with somebody, by the way, it doesn't have to be a family, it could just be someone you work with. You should care more about the people you work with than, let's say, people you don't know and not invested in.
Mhm.
The family of people in a workplace or something like that. To where, right down to your own marriage or your kids or whatever. Okay, but what's remarkable is we don't exercise the muscle that it takes through communication to reach past a cognitive problem.
Mhm.
Okay, so what happens is we have a knee-jerk reaction, and it's survival skill if you think about it, um, to repel anything that isn't on the same page with everything that we. It's primitive. Unless they're on board with everything that's going on with me, then they're going to stab me in the back someday.
Right.
Okay, so it's paranoid. It's
Mhm.
it's it's primitive. It's defensive. Remember, communications skillful communications non-defensive. Tell me why you think I'm an idiot. That's
Yeah.
a question. You can ask it, with genuine curiosity. I'm an idiot. Why? Tell me. It's not flattering, but you care to know about it. As opposed to if you're called an idiot, you say, well, you're an idiot, and you push back. That muscle is more, um, exercised, and we work on it more than the one that it takes to reach,
Isn't that a shame?
it'll kill us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. I suppose you can make a case that the defensive mechanism was to keep us alive, but I've also said this about trauma disorders. People have certain reactions to traumas that are actually defending them to keep them alive. They could grow up in a horrible situation.
Yep.
When they grow up and out, they may not have developed the other thing, that the very thing that was kept them alive, now that they're an adult in a new relationship, is now killing that relationship because they're
Yeah.
okay.
It helped them at one point in their life when they needed it, and so now they rely on it when it might not be the most useful tool in the toolbox for their current circumstance.
Yeah,
Did I
this is
summarize
real.
that?
That's perfect. That's exactly what happens. I deal with it all the time. And so if you think in terms of primitive terms, we've always been on the defense. And that psychological muscle is developed, the intellectual muscle is developed. And so now we enter into a period of refinement. When you think about refinement, I mean, how old are Homo sapiens? I don't even know. Like 50,000 years, well, more. Okay.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But the idea civilization only started a blink of the eye from that.
Right.
So from developmental biology, psychology, we haven't developed how to communicate. I mean, we do it, but we don't effectively communicate.
I was
And
thinking about this oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry. I was just thinking about this last night. I was thinking human beings are so unevolved in the grand scheme of things. We think we're like the pinnacle of humanity, like God's chosen people. Like we are so unevolved.
we're still involved. I'm gonna tell you that I broke this down. I gave a lecture once, and they think about the technology, our cell
Mhm.
phones and TVs and just space travel. It's amazing. Computers, all of that stuff. If we didn't have the human defensives, the primitive things that we're talking about that causes us all this, those things would have been developed 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Think about that. Think during the ancient Greece or Egypt, that they would have had cell phones. They would have. What got in the way was all of this defensive non-communication stuff.
Mhm.
So while I can't prove what I just said, although I think there's probably some mathematical thing you could work out, given if you quantify whatever the resistances that we have in our defenses, if you could quantify that, my suspicion is you would find out that we would have developed way past what we are now, and that we're very primitive, even with space travel and computers and
Mhm.
cell phones.
We don't even
That
have flying cars. I was promised flying cars, Howard.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. It
We are our
wasn't
own
me.
worst enemy. We could have had flying cars had we just learned how to communicate and work with each other, but we didn't. We did not
To,
prioritize flying cars.
to the extent we would have had it 2,000 years ago.
Mhm.
So yes, our politics are. I mean, look, it's why you wrote your book. It's why I wrote my book.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make an impact that would grab people by their
Yeah.
brain and say, this is why it's necessary.
Well, I have another question in a second, but let's just do a quick pause. I want to get this super chat in from Naruto. Carlin, check locals after this. I posted a link about a teacher that got fired for not affirming a student's identity as a cat. Thank you, Naruto. I think that that is a good contender for effed up news this week, and I will be posting the effed up news preview post after we get done this conversation so we can have that there. Guys, we are talking with Dr. Howard Asher. Dr. Asher has written a new book called 2024. You can currently is it pre-order on Amazon? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pre-order right now.
for the Kindle, you could actually pre-order it, and in
Mhm.
about, I guess, 2 weeks, the hardcover and paperback will be available.
Excellent. Excellent. I definitely encourage everyone to pick up a copy of Howard's book. I know I saw Patrice in the chat asking earlier how she can get it. So definitely pick that up. And if you happen to watch this stream after the on demand when it's a recording, the link will be in the description below. That is true if you're watching on Odyssey. That's true if you're watching on Rockfin. And I do appreciate my viewers over there, especially when they're not insulting me on Odyssey as they are prone to do every once in a while. But so let me see. Mount that like button if you haven't already. And let's get back into it. So Howard, one of the things that I've been thinking about in the course of this conversation is like, how do we let me think how I want to phrase this. Like with communities that are just like stuck to their guns and like okay, so one of the things I really wanted to do with Actively Unwoke with my book was I wanted to give people a way to empower themselves. And because I think that like my contention is one of the biggest problems in our culture right now in regards to politics, especially, and why the woke left have been able to make so many inroads into so many things is honestly because a lot of people are feeling very disempowered. They feel like they can't speak up. They feel like they don't have a voice. They feel like they can't express themselves. I think that the masks for the last 2 years, and I've said this a million times on this channel, but wearing something over your mouth every single day, like the thing that you use to express yourself, has only made this problem much worse because I think that the amount that we express ourselves is directly linked to our self-worth. And so, what I wanted to do in my book was to give people really practical things that they could do in order to speak up and fight back. I wanted to give them role models that they could watch to speak up, to show them how it's done because I think that this disempowerment, this hiding our voice, this hiding who we are, this not finding value in being able to speak, I know you don't like this term, but our truth to the world,
Mhm.
I think that that's a big problem in our culture and has led us down the road to where we are right now. What do you think about that idea?
Well, let me make sure I get the idea. What you said was right.
Mhm.
During this, the pandemic did a lot to show us stuff about who we are, and the masking is a really serious problem. I'm so curious about what's going to be happening to children from ages, birth till 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
who
Oh my
who
gosh.
the research done on facial connection and recognition and what they learn um, from parents, from other people. Uh, it's I don't think you can identify the danger enough as to what that could do to the developmental effect that it's going to have on young kids.
I think we're headed for a major mental health crisis,
I do,
especially with young people.
I do too, I think I'm not answering your question because you were talking about empowering.
Mhm.
So let me jump on. So it's serious what's going on, and uh, the woke or whatever political side who seems to have more power than I like with mandating some things. It's exasperating because it gets so ridiculous. There are reasons why people who shouldn't get vaxxed. They have medical
Mhm.
issues,
Mhm.
and um, when I heard whenever I've seen a debate of somebody making the case that, well, okay, vax mandate being mandated, but could there ever be an exception to that? And I expect to hear, yeah, of course, if their doctor, if they get something from their doctor that says whatever. I've never heard that. I've
Mhm.
never heard that from the other, I'll call it the other side, who's saying that there's got to be 100% masking and vaxing and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, there can be medical reasons why you shouldn't mask yourself for breathing and what have you.
But of course, we're gonna refer everyone to the CDC because we can't even have that conversation on YouTube. We have to refer everyone to the CDC for guidance.
Yeah, which is really absurd when you think of all the bad decisions they've made. And so I'm going to get to your part about like how empowerment.
Mhm.
It's in my book, by the way. I always like to be able to say that. It's in my book. Um, the founding principles of this nation were based on sooner or later the government's going to be out of line with what's right for you.
Hmm.
That was baked into their thinking. It wasn't like, let's make a government that gets it right all the time.
Right.
They actually said, let's look, we're human beings. Right now, the landowners are going to vote, but who the hell knows what happens, down the road. But these landowner males, don't get it right a lot, mostly. So we have to have some kind of governance that make it so at some point an individual says no. That was actually baked into the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk to the side that I don't agree with, you hear things like, well, which is more important, saving lives or your personal liberties?
Right.
There or and by personal liberties, it means also talking and thinking.
Right.
And then of course, if I'm willing to have the discussion, I start off with, well, really? I mean, of course, I want as many people to live healthy as they can, but do you think that if the way you are so nonchalant about a person's freedoms, and you see this a lot, the talking heads out there going, enough with this freedom stuff,
Mm-hmm.
well, at what point? Until they, come to your house and say, the way you need to live? I mean, so inevitably, I'm making this case that no matter who you are, no matter where you draw the line, sooner or later, you're going to look at the government and you're going to say, no, not with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was baked into the Constitution, into the Bill of Rights. No, not with my this, and this, but not this.
Right.
Yes, I'm willing to do this and this and this, but not this. You have to have a place where you say not this.
Right.
And that may require that you have courage to say it. Okay. So part of the empowerment is a deep dive into courage. Now, that's an interesting subject, courage, because what if your job's on the line? It's hard not to pay bills or,
Yeah.
or to feed your family or something like that. And so I'm certainly not going to judge that somebody might say, you know what, I don't believe in vaxxing for myself, but my job requires it. I know there was a court case, the Supreme Court, but just a scenario of, if I disagree with vaxxing, but I need my job, I could really see how somebody might say, okay, I'll get a vax because I don't want to lose my
Oh yeah.
paycheck.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think a lot of the judgment that I've seen, especially on like on YouTube, for people who frankly are getting the vaccine just to keep their job to be able to pay their bills. I am very uncomfortable with seeing a lot of these influencers who are frankly like printing money with their YouTube channels, telling people that are struggling to put food on the table to quit their job over the vaccine.
Right. So there could be a reason, like you were talking about, where a person just says, I gotta make a paycheck.
Right.
But then there are other things that aren't paychecks
Right.
that they can make a stand on.
And I think a
And
lot of times people don't acknowledge that not everything is going to cost them their job.
right. And so if it costs them a friend, or if
Mhm.
it costs them, they get talked about meanly or something like that, that might be a place where they'll expend some of their courage. Um, and so it's funny about freedom. They say freedom isn't free.
Mhm.
Um, it's sometimes you say a cliche and it sounds silly. It's really a good cliche. Freedom isn't free, and that every person will be confronted sometime in their life where, if it isn't a paycheck, it may be something else that they should be willing to give up for the freedom that. And so that's kind of it's a spiritual look into your own self. Is how much can I how much is freedom worth to me? And I
Mhm.
think it should be worth something. I mean, I think at some point it means everything, because at some point freedom is everything.
Mhm.
But I think there are times you're going to be confronted. Every person's going to be confronted with, do I stand for free thinking and free speech?
Oh yeah.
Even, yeah, even if it's against what my government says.
Mhm. I think people need to wrap their heads around that idea that if you haven't experienced it yet, it is going to come for you at some time. It
sooner or later.
absolutely will.
Yeah, sooner or later. And if you, I like that you can wrap your head around that, because if it's coming for you, now here comes the empathy, then it's coming for everybody else.
Right.
So maybe you can think about what other people have to do to make decisions for their lives, to make their lives work. And the kinds of things that they have to do, maybe you won't be so harsh in your judgment about them. And, I had this discussion with a friend of mine, and they were in a certain part of the country, and I asked them what the gas prices were because they were going up. And I said, "Oh, how are the gas prices?" And he texted me back. He said, I thought it was strange. He said, "Well, if the prices of gas go up, it's actually a good thing." And
That's like the White House saying inflation is a good thing.
yeah. That's what he was saying, and I knew he was going there, and I just avoided making anything more about that. But I'm telling you this because, and this plays to the cognitive dissonance. My take was he was dealing with his own cognitive dissonance. Like, yeah, it's not good for gas prices to go up, but it is good if you think about it this way, some way that justifies gas going up. Here's the way I think about gas going up. I wrote this in the book. The character claims that he did a mathematic calculation that shows as little as a 1 cent rise in the cost of gas can mean that a family loses their home. Okay, at least one family will lose their home if the price of gas goes up.
Right.
So follow me here. I didn't really work out the calculation, but I imagined that it's kind of like the butterfly effect,
right,
which I believe in, and that when we get too casual about inflation, like who's getting casual about inflation. How casual is it when somebody loses their home where they can't put gas in their car and they can't get to that job site, and because they didn't get to that job site, they lose the contract. It goes that kind of thing, and then in the end, you lose a house, you lose the home that you've grown up in, and so these things are really serious, and that's why the word courage and freedom are need to be linked at the hip, because to be free, you need to have courage.
And I think too, like, I mean, a lot of the things that I wrote about in my book, I tried to give people a wide variety of ways in which they could fight back. And something as simple as like, talk to your neighbor about what's being taught in the schools, or maybe like, have a conversation with a relative. So I tried to like give them really easy ways that they could start to speak up, because I think that sometimes people need to practice. And if you can do something easy, that means that that'll help you develop that courage or that resiliency to see, okay, I went over to my neighbor's house and we talked about this assignment, and we didn't talk about politics at all, but we talked about how the school probably shouldn't be, teaching stuff like this. And we were able to find common ground, and I didn't get canceled. And like, I wanted to give people a way to like have a positive experience with it. So they weren't dreading, like, if I speak up and speak my mind, I'm going to get canceled for sure.
I like what you're saying. If you go with how I put it before, which is like we haven't developed or exercised that muscle. A lot of people don't have a muscle for speaking. I don't want to say against something or for something. They want to maybe avoid certain things, but you have to exercise that muscle. And there's a way to ease into it. And I use it a lot. So you hear something, blah, 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 whatever. It's pretty easy to say, well, that's interesting. There may be a lot of ways to think about that. You don't have to disagree specifically. You could just generally say, that's an interesting perspective, and there can be other ways to think about that too. So what's an example? Someone says, okay, let's just use climate change. That's nice and loaded. Yeah, someone says, yeah, this climate change is killing anybody. I don't trust anybody who doesn't believe in it. It's got, unless you are for this thing and you give money to support this group, then you're a bad person. Okay, blah, 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 extreme, whatever. If you should ever hear a rant like that and it's addressed to you, you could say, that's interesting. There are other ways to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to get into a drawn out debate about it. You could just acknowledge, thanks for sharing, and there are other ways to think about it.
Hmm. I guess so. Well, Howard, let me ask you this. And again, we're gonna bring it back to me because I'm gonna be selfish. Like, you know, the people that I've had disagreements with lately, or that I feel like flew off the handle and didn't even try to repair the relationship. And I feel like a lot of people have this problem with their families when they have conflicts over politics, or with their friends and things like that. You know, even though I have made the decision that at least right now, those people, I cannot have them in my life because it's frankly much more of a distraction to things that I should be working on. I still care about them. And there is a part of me that does hope that at some point the relationship will be able to be repaired. For people who find themselves in that position where they've had conflict about politics, or maybe some other stupid disagreement where, you know, someone didn't want to admit that they were wrong and they flew off the handle. Like, as someone who deals with conflict resolution, what would you advise those people to do if they find themselves in a position of like, I don't know if I can rebuild the relationship with this person, but I really do care about them and I would like to if it's possible. What advice would you have?
Okay. The advice begins with, well, what are you to the person and where are you now in that relationship?
Hmm.
So I want to make a distinction. You could have a fallout with a person and somebody declares, okay, it's over. I never want to see you again.
Mhm.
So that's an official break.
Mhm.
Or you have a fallout with a person, but it's an ongoing rift, but there's still communication.
Ugh, that's what I'm in right now. It's like
Okay. All
there's
right.
an on
So
well, it's not even like an ongoing. Okay, I'm just gonna share more information because again, we're gonna make this about me. I'm gonna be selfish.
all right.
Like, there's not even direct communication with this group, but it's like they still talk about me all the effing time. And
Oh,
so it's like communication via Twitter. And
really?
it's like, you know, if you don't wanna have the relationship, I understand that, and I'm perfectly happy with that decision, but don't pretend you don't, like, want me in your life in some way because you keep talking about me all the time.
Okay. Well, so can I do a deeper dive into your situation?
Oh, sure. Why
Okay.
not?
Here we go. Is this a family or is this a business or a committee situation? What is it? Who are these
It
people?
friend, well, former friends slash kind of business, but not really.
One person or a group of people?
There's several people, there's one protagonist, but there's several people involved.
Does that protagonist run how the rest of everyone thinks?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Find out.
Mhm.
Is it common knowledge there's a riff going on?
Oh, yeah, it's very public. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
and I have
Um,
not behaved well in this either, I will admit that. I have not behaved well
how
either.
bad how bad have you been?
I've been I've been a little bit bad, but I
Bad.
feel like it was merited.
Okay, well, maybe, but okay. Let's say it was completely merited, but unskillfully handled by you.
Completely merited, but unskillfully handled. I think that that's, a great way to put it.
All right, all right. Does it call for an apology on your part for how you unskillfully handled it?
I feel like I have dug my heels in at this point, and I want an apology from them. I feel like I've apologized multiple times, and I am owed an apology from them before I do any further apologizing.
All right, all right. Um,
I'm sorry, I'm getting feisty with you because now this is like it's coming up. It's getting personal.
I didn't detect that. If you were being feisty, I didn't get it. No, you're fine. Um, I'll tell you, my gut tells me, without knowing a whole lot more, is I would identify some other people in the group to test what their take is on it.
See, I
You
care
know,
about them less than I do about the protagonist.
okay, so the for you the main course is this is the protagonist, as you say.
Yes.
All right. what's the state of the relationship now? Did they say, I don't want to ever hear from you again?
Well, again, they have made it very clear that they do not want me in their life at all, and then they proceed to talk about me all the time.
Oh, well, do you find that to be inconsistent? Because they don't have you, but they
Well,
could keep you the devil.
and this is exactly what I'm saying. It's like I fundamentally believe like if you don't want someone in your life, you don't spend all day thinking about them and talking about them. And
Oh,
so
they're
I'm like, come on. Like just like call a spade here. Like you haven't let go of this either.
yeah. Yeah, I don't. You can't have what you're asking for. They can talk about you till the cows come home.
Mhm.
There's nothing you can do to stop them.
Right.
Uh, it may hurt you and offend you. Well, is it only talk contained in their little group, or does
More
it
or
have?
less. I mean, it's definitely mostly like within their little group.
If it is, then because you got libel issues if it's outside the group and it's harming you in some other kind of way. But okay, I'm going to be forceful with you now since you said
Uh-oh.
yeah, since you said you were feisty, I'll be forceful. It's not up to you what they talk about.
I know.
Yeah, you're supposed to give that up. And you really demonstrate that you're over it when they can say whatever they want behind your back.
It's just so aggravating.
It's
It causes
aggravating.
so many problems. It's like and that of course is the point.
Yeah.
The point is to cause problems. The point is to be a distraction. And I go back to like these are people that we should have a common goal. And what I've said to them is like, can you guys just shut the hell up and leave me alone and let me focus on what I want to do and you can focus on what you want to do and we don't have to be in each other's lives. We don't have to
Well,
be
yeah,
best
yeah.
friends, you know?
Okay, okay. So when you say that it's a distraction, the cause that they were for and the cause that you're for is the same ish
In theory.
in theory. And you can do the cause in your own way without them.
Oh, yes,
Correct?
and that's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah.
All right. So, um, I'm going to push hard.
That's okay.
That it's your problem that you're making it, not them, and it's up to you not to get irritated that they're creating all that kind of noise.
I know.
I
I
know, you know.
know. God damn it.
Yeah. Well, here, how about this? You're better than that. What?
I understand that in theory, but it's one of those things where I'm like, the psychologist in me is like, it's like I'm dissecting this situation and being like, what the hell even again, it's going back to like, what the hell even caused this in the first place? Like, I truly don't understand where a lot of this stuff came from. And stuff is being made up, and there are things that are said that are just not true, and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going over here going like, did you have a psychotic break? And I'm trying to be empathetic to the situation, but it's really frustrating. And the psychologist in me, I think, wants to understand. And again, I do care about people.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether I'm pissed at people or not, like at the end of the day, I think that's the part of like where I can't let this go at the moment, I'm really desperately trying, and we should definitely not be having this conversation on the internet, but we're gonna do it anyway because that's what we do. Like I think it comes back to the fact that I do actually care about them, and I think that this whole thing is ridiculous, and what like in my mind, like I was trying to be so focused on the goals. I'm like, can we just work towards our common goals, please? Can we stop trying to undercut and sabotage each other? Because we have a much bigger set of problems over here that we should be working on.
Well,
And,
I have a, I have a cause of action for you.
okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Tell me what to do. Solve all
Okay.
my problems, Howard.
I'm going to solve all your problems. At some point, it's useful and functional to actually say what the reason this is happening, even if you're wrong. So when you said, I have no idea why this is happening, get out of that frame of mind,
Mhm.
be a clinician that you are, be analytical as that you are.
I
And
think there was a psychotic break. I think that's why it's happening.
okay, so a psychotic break. No. Well,
I
that's
really
actually
do.
good.
I'm not making that up. I think there
I
was a
heard
psychotic break.
I heard that the first time,
Yeah.
and I said, if that's what happened, then you also know it was bound to happen anyway, sooner or later.
Oh, that's a fair point. I do know that.
Yeah, I know you know that.
God
You know what? Maybe what's getting to you is because you do care about the person who had the psychotic break. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I care about all of them, but like,
Yeah, no, okay, but that's, and it breaks your heart that such a psychotic break happened and affected the situation this way.
yes.
That's the right feeling. Um, I early on in my work with people, I discovered something that freed me, really freed me, because there's a lot of stuff I had to work with people.
Hmm.
And that was that sometimes you can't help everything.
I know. And you
Okay.
have to let people make their own mistakes.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough how much it brought my life, to making it feel like I was living as
Hmm.
opposed to being dead inside. Because if it's based on whether other people get better or not, then we're screwed.
Yeah, I know. Joshua, who's my life coach in like real life, he tells me this all the time. He was like we talk about how I can't base my mood on what other people are saying and doing, and I feel like I get pretty good at that, but sometimes it's just hard. And I think that when there are people that you care about, it's particularly hard.
Yeah, yeah. How much did you attempt when you realized there was a psychotic break going on to make a reach out, ask the person to take a deep breath,
Oh,
please,
repeatedly,
please see
repeatedly.
things, yeah, please try to consider seeing things differently.
Oh god, over and over again.
Right. All
Yes.
right. Well, you see where I'm going, right?
Yeah,
If
I've done everything I can is
Yeah,
essentially what you're saying.
okay, yeah. So if you paid out all of that treasure to make the connection, your freedom is you can't help everybody and you
Yeah.
can't have everything you want with other people.
You know, there's truth in that, and that's something that I have thought about, and I think, even though, again, I can say that I've been uppity in this situation too because it's been extraordinarily frustrating for me, but there are also things that I've done in it where I'm like, "You know what? I did everything I could. I did everything I could." And I think sometimes when relationships go south, and again, I think that, you know, I think that this is again broadly applicable to people, so I don't feel like we're just going down a personal Carlin therapy
It's
session on
really
this
important. You
channel.
know what? I no, I
I,
obviously want to help you personally. I want it to help me. I want to hear my words help me. But no, this is really good overall.
it's good to know, like, when you've actually made an effort, when you've actually tried, and to feel confident that, like, there's really nothing more I could have done.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have, like, I don't have the best relationship with my family, and it's, partially about the politics stuff and partially just other stuff that they've made excuses for. But it's like I did everything I could. And at some point, I think that, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, I think that people just need to live their own lives and to
Oh,
know that there are, even if you lose your family over stupid political discussions, or you lose your friends because they have psychotic breaks or they get addicted to outrage and it just like impairs your ability to have any human relationship with them. I think if any of these things happens, like there are so many other people in the world that you can build relationships with.
yeah, absolutely. You always should gravitate towards the people that make who you are better.
Mhm.
And that's where your energy is. The other energy that you're using up, even by being distressed over it, is you can't get that back.
Oh, that's so true.
You can't get the time back, and you can't get the energy back. And you only have so much energy in your life.
Mhm.
So, but here I'm gonna kind of end it in a despair kind of a way.
Oh, good. Thank you, Howard.
No, 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 no. You know me. I'm gonna go to the good stuff.
Yes.
We don't know down the road how anything might get restarted again,
Mm,
and if it does, you want to be ready for it. In other words, your door is always open to if something changes and there could be a connection. To be ready for that, you have to move on. If you
yeah.
stay stuck, then your door's not open the way it really should be. So they may be gone forever, even your family.
Mhm.
Strange things happen. I've done this long enough to see over very many years where there wasn't any connection. Some there was a crack that opened up, an opportunity, a window, and the person actually was ready for it because they actually moved on. Moving on makes you ready.
And that's honestly, like, how I've been handling this entire situation, and I just kinda, like again, like, I was supposed to do different business projects with not just the one protagonist, but with this, like, group of people, and that's kind of how I eventually, like, came to handle it, is I mourned it, I was sad, I was depressed, but there reached a point with me where I was like, I've gotta live my own life, man. I've gotta move forward. I got a book coming out. I've got things I wanna do in the world, and am I really sad that this business project that I think is just a fantastic idea that I would actually still like to do at some point, am I sad that that fell through? I am incredibly sad about it, but life has to go on, and, that's the approach that I took with this is, like, I like, trying to focus back in on myself and what I wanted to do, and I've made so much progress since then with other things that like with like actively unwoke and getting a lot of stuff set up for that I'm really excited about. And so I agree with you. I think that like ultimately we need to work on ourselves and just know that if you are doing things and let me know if I'm right about this, but if like you're doing things that feed your soul and that make you happy and feel like you're contributing something to the world, or even if you're just helping one other single person, I think that oftentimes that can help and it can focus you on what matters. And I think that we should always be, or at least I always try to think about like how am I serving the world? How am I serving the people that are around me? And there are just so many opportunities to help people now more than ever, even just by having additional human empathy that I think that's what I've tried to focus on anyway. And
Well,
I'm not perfect at it, but I've tried.
okay, but you'll get even better at it because you're asking the question. Look, you're better off that you've known the people, whatever happened, happened. And what you're going to make is going to be bigger and better. And maybe there's a reunite somewhere down the road. I don't know. If it doesn't, then you can put it in the
If
category.
it
It's not,
does, or if it does, fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too.
yeah, yeah.
That's how I feel about it.
But there's something I want to emphasize though. It's okay. I work with people who had just dreadful upbringings,
Mhm.
and you develop an understanding about it. I had an okay upbringing. I mean, I had just a regular upbringing, and I was lucky. And we grew up in the San Fernando Valley at a time that it was kind of it was mellow and exciting at the same time,
Mhm.
and we lived in a little house. We had one bathroom, and at least there was a swimming pool that somebody had 3 houses down. So we felt like we had everything, but it was a
Right.
very, very modest upbringing. And so I've worked with people who've had horrible, dreadful. I don't even want to get into it. It would make you sick to hear how they've grown up. And when I work with them, um, at some point, not right away, but at some point, I talk about when they know that they're going to be okay.
Mhm.
Okay. They're going to have this for the rest of their life. Well, yeah, they'll think about it for the rest of their life. They'll always be able to know it and reference it. But what will be the thing that makes them know that they're really okay and they recovered? And here's what the answer to that is. That when they're living the life they would have lived anyway, if none of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
That's how you measure it. So you encountered these people. It looked like it had some kind of promise to it, and it went south,
Mhm.
and it hurt, and there was heartbreak to it. But whatever it was going to promise on your own, you make it happen anyway.
That's what I'm trying to do.
There
Because we
you
have to keep
go.
moving forward.
Yeah,
If we don't keep moving forward, then we stagnate, and then we just live in all those horrible, awful emotions for the rest of our lives.
having the life you would have had anyway, even if you'd gotten everything you wanted,
Mhm.
even though you didn't. That's how you measure it. And you have a good track record. You have a good track record that should give you some confidence. Nothing's for sure, of course, but
Yeah.
you have a good record that would give you confidence that if you have a goal, you'll probably meet it.
Yeah.
Okay. and it's not going to be with those people. It'll be with someone else.
It'll be with people who want to move in that direction, who want to do that more than they want to hang on to petty nonsense and bullshit.
Boy, just even the term that you're using, you don't want to have anything to do with that.
No, I really don't. I'm
There's
so
not
over
enough,
it.
I know there's just not enough time in life.
There's really not. Really not. Well, Howard, we've been going for almost 2 hours at this point, and so I know things get a little silly after 2 hours, so we wanna try to wrap things up. I do just wanna say thank you to Emphasize for the 2 super chats. You didn't write anything in them, but I do greatly appreciate the support. Howard, any final thoughts today on any of the subject? I mean, we've kind of, like, waffled around all over the place, but, fascinating conversation as always.
There's a lot of things going on here, and our books that we write were written for the people out there in the public.
Mhm.
They're important books. Um, it will matter that people get them, read them, and tell other people about them. If you want to have these books that were written are for empowerment.
Mhm.
There's a lot of challenges going on, and this is the purpose why these were written. I don't know if you posted my website.
Yes. In the
Okay.
description, guys, if you're looking for
Okay.
it.
So I'm, like I said, the ebook or the Kindle is already for pre-sale. The paperback and the hard copy in about 2 weeks, I imagine. And let's follow up, okay?
Mhm.
Because I want to know if these ideas have impact. I'd like to hear from people about it. The responses that I've been getting has been very gratifying. They just, it hits the note that people, um, you know, I think when you write something, it's not that you're enlightening anybody; you're introducing them to themselves.
Mhm.
And I think that's what people come away with is like I see myself in these characters, and so and by the way, this is all this introduction is the first introduction to the general public that I've been making. So this is my inauguration with the book via you.
Well, I'm honored that you came to my channel to make the introduction to the public. We've got Patrice who just put in her pre-order. Sin says thanks. The info was good for me. Thank you, Sin. I appreciate that. I think sometimes when we have these conversations, Howard, like especially when we get into like drama and like stuff like that, and you're giving your good advice, I kind of feel like the people who are meant to hear that advice are in the chat watching us right now, and like so the people that will take something away from these types of conversations, like that's who these conversations are made for. Maybe when your book comes out, so the book club in my locals that we're doing right now, it ends on February 20th. And that's when we're going to have our conversation about our current book, but maybe for our next book we could do your book for my book club and locals.
You know, I was waiting for you to say that. I would
Mhm.
love it. I would
Yeah.
absolutely love it. I want to hear what people think about the philosophies, the characters, the story elements, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a yes on me.
I think that would be great. We haven't read a novel. I don't well, no, we read Rand, so we haven't read a novel recently. So this will be perfect. So we'll do Howard's book next month for book club and locals. Guys, if you have not yet put in your pre-order for Howard's book, only the Kindle version is up right now, but there's going to be like a physical copy that's going to be going up soon. It's on Amazon. The link is in the description below. 2024, it's a great book. Like I said, I've read it. I actually read an earlier version that Howard did. I think what he did with the new version is amazing. I highly recommend it. So we'll read it for our book club, and then we'll bring Howard in to have a chat with us, and we can tell him what we think. Sound good, Howard?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Of course. And just want to remind everyone, if you're interested in my book, you can head over to activelyunwoke.com right now and put in your pre-order. By popular demand, I did do both an Amazon pre-order option and a non-Amazon pre-order option. So if you go to the non-Amazon pre-order, you're just going to go to Simon & Schuster's website. They're going to put it on Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, their own bookshop, IndieBound. So if you don't want to give your money to the evil empire, I totally and completely understand. And we've got options for there as well. Guys, I do this type of stream every day at 5. Sometimes it's just me talking about the news and what's going on in the world. Sometimes I have on guests. Tomorrow, I'm going to be having on Alu from Liberty Block to talk about the New Hampshire secession movement. On Thursday, we're just going to do a regular stream where I'm going to talk about the news. We do this Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on this channel. And then Friday, I don't have it up. On Friday, we're going to move over to my second channel, Actively Unwoke, for happy hour, when we're going to be watching a woke training and learning what we can from it, which is why you guys know more about how critical race theory is taught than every conservative pundit on the planet. And I do just want to remind everyone, if you want to support the work I'm doing, and I greatly appreciate those who do, please consider joining my locals community. My locals is how you're going to get access to book club. You only get to be in book club if you're a local supporter. It's an extra perk. We're going to be talking with Howard next month. We're going to be talking with Aaron Keinsvatter from UVM. We're going to be about totalitarian mind control exercises and things like that. So that's going to be great. You can become a member in my locals by going to kb.locals.com. It's $5 a month. You can also do $50 a year if you want to just get those 2 months for free. You can also make a one-time gift and you get access to locals for the entire value of your gift. So if you make $100 one-time gift, that's like 2 years that you get access to my locals community. We're going to read a lot of books in those 2 years. But guys, I will be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And again, as a reminder, we're not doing nothing remotely controversial tonight because Joshua is a little under the weather, but he'll be back. He's fine. But I'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Howard, thank you again for coming on the channel today. I always love our conversations, even when they turn into a personal therapy session. I really appreciate you. You've been with me since the beginning. We met like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we're still friends. I haven't pissed you off yet. And I just always love our conversations and think you provide so much insight.
Yeah, you're a great friend. And if you do piss me off, we'll talk about it.
We'll have a conversation. You won't just write me off and call me out on Twitter.
You can bank on that. I'm not going to do that. Same thing for you.
I appreciate that. Guys, again, Howard's website and Amazon is in the description below, so please make sure you get your orders in. All right. I guess that's all we have for today. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow at 5. Have a good one, everyone.